Hi guys, welcome back to another video. This one's going to be a bit different. It's going to be kind of like a mailbag, but we're going through this box of Facebook Marketplace junk. So the story behind this is I had a friend that saw this box of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, and it had a Nintendo Power Glove sitting on top of it. He wanted the Power Glove, but the guy from Facebook wouldn't let him leave without taking the entire box of stuff, and I ended up with the rest of it. So this was a free box of junk, and we're just going to go through it and see what kind of stuff's in here. I've already kind of looked at it, and some of it's a little bit interesting, but we're going to go through. First off, right on top here, we got this big coil of wire, which I believe is old phone wire, like the type of phone wire that would be either ran in a building or buried somewhere, but you can see there's just a whole bunch of individual strands. Hopefully that's in focus well enough. This is kind of awkward to film because it is such a large box. So I've got it sitting here on my living room floor. This is just an empty piece of like anti-static foam. There's this, which is from Radio Shack actually, an engineer's notebook, an integrated circuit applications. So this is kind of cool actually. If we let's make sure I'm somewhat well focused on this. You can go through here. You can tell it's pretty old. 1982 says right on it. There's some various schematic symbols that it shows. And if you go through this, there's, well, I guess we can see. Reviewing the basics, it goes over MOS and CMOS integrated circuits, TTL, linear integrated circuits, like voltage regulators and whatnot. So it's kind of like an old project book from Radio Shack. You see quite a few different things. Just a whole bunch of different schematics that lets you do different things. Yeah, so basically just a project book. So that's kind of cool. Moving on, we have a box. This is some type of audio-video thing. This says game feeder on the top of it. It says USB game port here. There's two USB ports and a serial port looking thing. Headphone adjustment, microphone input adjustment, and then line inputs on it. On the back, looks like this was meant to be rack mounted apparently. It says rack on it. Not sure what this cable ends in. A connector with a whole bunch of pins on the end of it and a USB port on the other side. And on the back of the unit we've got actually MIDI in and out. And then a couple more USB ports and more audio ports. So that's interesting. I'm not real sure what it does. Assuming some kind of sound type thing that must have controlled something or another. We got a bag of old springs. That's not super interesting. Going further in here, we've got a couple of these. These are IDE to CF adapters, so you could use a CF card as a hard drive effectively in an old computer. Though I think at this point compact flash cards are more or less dead anyway, so you're converting one dead standard to another dead standard. But those are brand new in the package. Could be worth something to somebody, I guess. Some Neopixel LEDs. So, you got the whole strip there. They did quite the job of soldering these guys, as you can kind of see there. They went through and wired them all together. I would have assumed that these were connected together like that at the factory, but maybe they're not. I could be wrong on that one. I don't really know anything about these particular LEDs and what they are, but the front of them, it looks like they're RGBW LEDs. So those could be fun to play with if they work. This is just a like a G2 belt for a 3D printer, timing belt. So it looks like it came off of Amazon. Now this thing's kind of cool. I'm not entirely sure what this would have came out of, but it claims on the tag that it's from an Army computer. There's a little tag here. You can see it sold for $4.87 from I'm assuming either a like gift shop of a museum or an antique store, but it's kind of neat. It's got a bunch of various gears on the inside of it. Not entirely sure what it would have done, but it is cool. Might look good on a shelf somewhere, honestly. Just as if it were some kind of a museum piece. There's quite a few of these, just big old boxes from Mouser, just quarter-watt carbon film resistors of different values. These ones are, these are what, 100K and 22K it looks like. So there's quite the number of those actually. There's some more. Again, they're all different values. Not sure how many's in a box. It's got to be at least 100 though. Yeah, these big boxes of carbon film resistors. There's this little dude, which is a 5 volt 2 amp power supply, AC to DC power supply. So that will be quite useful if it works. Next up, we've got an anti-static bag full of stuff. This is a phone cable. That's not very interesting. What else is in here? So the big anti-static bag is actually full of smaller anti-static bags, which have various things in them. This one's got some crystal oscillators and I think like a 1602 LCD in this bag, which is a useful part to have around. There's an inductor in there. You'd almost think that these are supposed to be kits, but they don't seem to have much of a rhyme or reason as to what's in them. This one's got some different IC sockets in it. We've got one with, yeah, just really assorted parts. There's a bunch of LEDs and a switch in there. Different resistors. Different chips and even a microprocessor in this one. And a RAM chip. This one's got a couple different circuit boards in it, a handy board and a serial interface board, whatever those are. Got a whole bunch of different sizes of pin headers in this one. You got a tube with various 7.4 series logic chips in it. And a couple other miscellaneous chips, one of which looks to be a bridge rectifier down in the bottom of the big bag. So kind of just looks like someone threw all their old random parts into some bags and stuck them into storage for a while and didn't want them anymore. So a bunch of different parts there, some of which are useful, some of which maybe not so much. We have Ghost Rider 2 working copy. This is on a 5 1/4 inch genuine floppy disk. That's kind of amusing. Now, I'm young enough to the point where I've never had to actually use a floppy disk for anything before in my life. So, yeah, that's something different for me. This is some kind of, it claims to be a digital music player. It's got a broken antenna on the back of it here, and absolutely nothing on the front. Must have had something to do with internet though, because it's got an antenna on the back and it's got an Ethernet port on the back as well, than just an audio left and right. And then that's got a power adapter somewhere buried in the box. Oh yeah, that's an old school power adapter. That's got an actual transformer in it. It's got some nice weight to it. And that came with a old Microsoft mouse. Very yellowed mouse. This is actually a serial mouse, so not USB, not PS2, serial. Oh, this is kind of cool. So this is a digital logic probe, quite probably from Radio Shack, and it has a chart on the back that shows the LED statuses, which is unfortunately quite hard to read, but it says high, pulse, and low on the front of it, and then this has presumably like 5 volts and ground, and then you could probe different points on your circuit, and you can figure out the logic level that that point in your circuit is. Old Radio Shack amplified speaker system. Got a transformer for something. 23 watt transformer, 20 volt AC at 20 milliamps. It's got a funny connector on the outside of it. Could maybe be useful for something. This is like an S video to RCA composite adapter, which probably goes along with the cameras in here. Got a Tyco video cam, which makes me think that it's, which kind of makes me think that it's meant as a toy, because from what I remember, having things that say Tyco on them, they were all like cheap RC cars and things. And this certainly looks as though it wouldn't actually function for anything, because the viewfinder just kind of goes straight through. It's got a lens cap, it's super cheap and plasticky. I don't think this is a real camera, to be completely honest. I think that's just a toy. Anyway, Radio Shack parts. These are just silicon rectifier diodes, 2.5 amp, 1 kV rated. Add that to the pile of parts. This is a radio controller system. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I'm not entirely sure what this controlled, but it's got an antenna on it. It's a dial that says house, and then a unit 1 and 9. It's an X10 powerhouse. Oh, I wonder if this was, it's got a power socket on the bottom, so I bet you this was to control like a lamp. It says it's a transceiver module on it, and then you get the part 15 rules. Yeah. Can power a 500 watt incandescent lamp, which makes me think this was supposed to be like a radio control system for like turning a light on and off, which is kind of crazy looking. It's kind of like a smart outlet before smart outlets existed, so to speak. Radio Shack ABS project enclosure. Kind of cool. A couple of panel mount, probably not LEDs. These would probably be incandescent lamps. Power supply. Oh, this is actually an Apple Newton power adapter, if you can see that on there. There you go. That's kind of cool. I don't think we have an Apple Newton in here, but it's kind of neat that it's in there. You got an old Netgear, I was gonna say TV remote, but Netgear, this makes me think this must be for one of the audio things, because this has a playlist, genre, artist, track button. That, oh, actually, yeah, that's to this audio box. So that says Netgear on it as well. So some kind of audio system. You got a lot of what looks to be mouse droppings, honestly. Max Blast 3 installation software. Yeah. Not super interesting. Some random hunks of plastic. We have this switch on a sort of wooden backing that feels like it doesn't work anymore. This bag has one of these like heat bed control MOSFETs for a 3D printer in it. That could be useful for something. Got another anti-static bag with a bunch of stuff in it, which these are all pretty nicely labeled as to what they have. You can see on there. But we'll crack her open and look anyway. We've got a red plastic box project enclosure. It's pretty much exactly what it says is in here. You've got a 8-cell NiCad battery from Radio Shack, which is leaking a bit. Another smaller project box, and we've got a non-floppy floppy disk, 3.5-inch Interactive C version 2.8. 5.1 for MS-DOS from Digital Microsystems. So, some more various software on floppies. This is a little RFID reader, so that's USB. And then there's a bunch of these little key tags and a card. So that could be fun to play around with. This almost looks like a little camera, but I'm not entirely sure what that is or what it's for. A couple of sticks of DDR laptop memory, it looks like. A really busted up micro switch. Some random adapter and a serial card, I believe, for a computer. So moving on, another one of these toy video cameras. An old multimeter. So this is kind of cool. It's a Sanwa multimeter. Have to see if that still works. Moving right along, we have a combo USB hub type thing, which can take SD cards and USB ports. So it's just a cheap USB 2 hub, it looks like. There's some more random components. Metalized film capacitor. Rated at 400 working volts DC. The Radio Shack part, 0.1 microfarad. This thing's kind of cool. This is a voice record playback IC with a 20-second capacity. You could record your voice on this for 20 seconds, which was purchased from Radio Shack for $17.99 back in the day. Might have to play around with that in another video, but that could be sort of interesting. There's some kind of a, what I assumed initially was a computer interface card, but yeah, that's got some other stuff on it. This may be a super old computer interface card. It's got an external plug on it that somebody's added some wires to, and this has been kind of hacked up, as you can see, but you know, maybe somebody knows what something like this would do, because honestly, I don't. You got Voice Direct Data Book, interactive speech. This is some kind of some form of a book. Looks like maybe even a data sheet for an IC, perhaps. Voice Direct Command Data Set. Yeah, so this is for some kind of an IC or something, which we may have in here, who knows. There's an old power strip. Power strips are always useful. Kind of getting into the, old box of cables. That's a SATA cable. I think that's a SATA 1 cable to be specific, because it doesn't have the lock tabs on it, which I think is indicative of SATA 1. Not really sure what this cable would have been for. Actually, I am sure what this cable would have been for. This has little tags on it that say Z, which makes me think this is for the Z axis of a 3D printer, just going from the other parts that we found in here. Focus back down on the box because we're not showing anything too useful. We've got a Radio Shack compact disc cassette adapter. This would be one of those things that you'd shove in your car stereo, and then it gives you an aux port so you can hook your phone into your old car stereo. Kind of cool, I guess. Don't have much of a use for it. Radio Shack, another phone cord. We have another piece of computer hardware in here. Looks like another one of these serial card type things. StarTech branded IC on that, and then 2 serial ports on it. This is a 3/32 sub mini stereo jack. This is like one of the tiny little audio jacks. 3-position DIN jack. It's just a connector. Got an old landline phone, also from Radio Shack. This guy did a lot of shopping at Radio Shack, apparently. He had another connector that would have plugged into one of those serial cards from the looks of it. Absolute mess of wires. It's like a headphone extension cable. This one has some kind of a switch and power supply looking thing on the end of it. Not sure what that's about. Figure 8 power lead, that could come in handy. Got a 5-pin DIN plug. Mono or phono plugs. Phono plugs. They're left and right audio channels, looks like. Another SATA cable. Duophone. This is a telephone recording system control. So I guess that would have been for like an answering machine back in the day. Got some of this cable management strain relief. Or, well, not strain relief, but got some of this cable management type stuff that you'd wrap around a cable that you want to manage. Another one of these pieces of 3D printer control wire, which is also labeled Z, just like the other one was. That's kind of odd. How many Z axes do you need? 6-pin plug, also from Radio Shack. Not sure what that would have plugged into. Yeah, kind of an odd plug. This is some form of RCA adapter cable. Not entirely sure what kind of device that would have plugged into, but RCA cable of sorts for sure. We've got a controller for something. This has a cut off piece of phone line on the end of it, and then it's got 4 buttons on it. So this must have been some kind of custom controller for something or another. Kind of interesting. This is, I think, one of those compact flash to IDE adapters or something very similar. It's quite beat up. Really old solder sucker. Soldavac. Looks like this thing was used and abused. Still tries to work though. A thermocouple for a water heater. I assume that'd be for like a natural gas water heater. I am not sure what this thing is out of. This looks like maybe a laser projector module, if I had to guess. If you look at it there, it looks like there's 3 different lasers, and I guess through a bunch of optics and out the front, so maybe this is from like a laser projector. If so, it could be fun to take the laser diodes themselves out of this. It actually does look like that's what this is. So that could be fun to salvage parts out of. This is a headphone extension cable, brand new in the package. You got another one of these sort of things where you've got an outlet on one side and another outlet on the other side. So this would be some type of control, which I'm assuming has a switch on the end of it. Oh, it's actually got a... Well, actually, what is this? Oh, this is a timer. Okay. It's an alligator clip wire that came out with that. So this is sort of like... So this is like an electronic timer. It has this remote box. I'm not sure if this would be... This would probably be in like minutes. So 15, 30, 60, and 120. I'm assuming minutes. And then you can turn that, and then you got a reset and a start. So, kind of interesting. Maybe not super useful, but kind of interesting. Power supply. 12 volt 1.2 amp. Again, old school regulator. Again, old school transformer based power supply. A little 12 volt DC PC fan. And this is what the power supply was plugged into. ICOM communication receiver for computer, which must be some kind of, well, I'm not real sure, honestly. This has got like a BNC jack on it, on the back, and then a serial port, a serial cable, power in, looks like a headphone jack, which says external SP. So some kind of computer receiver. And to be honest, I'm not real sure what that is or what it's for or what kind of signals the thing would receive, but kind of odd. I wonder if it's almost like some kind of software-defined radio type thing. Spool of blue wire. Some female-to-female jumper cables. Some other terminated wire. Micro switch with a very odd arrangement of stuff on it. You can see that. This must have been for something custom. Another piece of this cable management coil stuff. Got what looks like it could be a little camera or something. I'm not real sure what that is. Got like a headphone jack on the bottom of it. Got this piece of custom electronics, which has got a bunch of stuff stuck to it. Oh, this is interesting. So this is actually the voice direct thing. This is what we were looking at the manual for originally. So this is some kind of audio processing thing, and it's got a microphone there, microphone down here, and a speaker hanging off of it. And there's another sideboard here, which maybe that's some kind of microcontroller type thing. Yeah, it is. It's a PIC 16 something or another. I wonder what they had this set up to do. You can see the back of it all wired together. This is on a piece of perf board, but it doesn't, it's the type of perf board that doesn't have copper on it, so you can't solder to it. You have to do this the hard way, which I've used this stuff before, and it's kind of awful, but that could be something interesting. This might actually, yeah, this is socketed too, so this thing would come off of here. Another power supply from Radio Shack, answering machine AC adapter. This is 9 volts, 750 milliamps, and the end is cut off of it. This looks like some really old type of joystick. You can see on the side of it, it's got 2 potentiometers, and then a little stick, maybe that came out of like a remote control or something like that, almost looks like. Molex to SATA power adapter. A couple of neon bulbs, also from Radio Shack. Kind of getting to the bottom of it here, that looks like a motion sensor. This is like a doorbell button, but instead of a doorbell, it says emergency on it, so I guess it's like a panic button of sorts. This says telephone pickup on it, made in Taiwan. Not entirely sure. It's got like a suction cup on it, and then it's got a 1/8 inch jack on the other end. Not real sure what that would have been used for. Got some more random audio plugs. Another phone cable with a spring stuck on it. There's a few more various ICs stuck in little blue plastic things in a sealed bag. I'm not sure what these guys are. A USB cable that does power and not data according to the tag on it. Little toggle switch. This is a 250 watt server power supply with a wire soldered on it there. That probably makes it so it turns on as soon as you give it power. So this thing is incredibly heavy for only being a 250 watt power supply. It's probably super old. It's an Aztec branded one. Does 14 amps on the 12 volt rail, which is not a lot. I've got another anti-static bag with some computer parts in it. Looks like various types of RAM. Yeah, it's a bunch of different RAM chips, it looks like. So you got, this must be like DDR2, DDR1. Yeah, DDR1, 400 megahertz. Super old RAM module, 512 megabytes of it. That's empty. This is also empty. Dropped whatever this is. That's another little RAM module. Viking components. Looks like that would have went in maybe a laptop, but that does not look like any type. Alright, so I don't know how many people have actually even made it this far into the video, but at this point my microphone died, so we're doing this as a voiceover, and there's not a whole lot left in the box. You saw me pull out an Ethernet cable and a power switch there, and this is another, I think, phone cable most likely, and some type of adapter for a phone line. There are a lot of phone related things. I kind of wonder if this guy wasn't some form of like telephone installation technician. Another piece of cable management stuff. Another random connector. SATA to Molex power. Found another one of those earlier, I believe. 4 rubber feet in a bag. Couple more like phono jacks sitting in the bottom there. An alligator clip wire. Micro switch. Another micro switch. More Radio Shack parts. That looks like a diode of some sort. Another composite RCA cable. That looks like a micro USB cable. And one of the more interesting things that I found in this box were these little guys, which are, they're like little counter displays, little electromechanical counters, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at this random box of stuff that I got from a friend that got it from a guy on Facebook Marketplace. I thought it was kind of interesting to look through just to see what kind of stuff was there. Looked like some guy that, like I said, maybe a telephone installation technician or something like that, and like to tinker with electronics in his spare time. So I got a few useful things out of it, and I might be making some videos of some of the products that were in here. So anyway, that's it for now, guys. See you next one. Bye.